Hello, my name is Connor.
And I'm Jason.
And you're listening to the Amazed and Perplexed podcast.
Well, today we want to welcome you into Matthew 17. I will be beginning in verse 24. And this has been a long conversation. I never know where you are, listener. But I don't know how much this matters, but Jesus just talked about the idea that he would be killed. And then he talked about the idea that prior to that, he was talking about their ability to do anything. And so he runs into this context, and it's an interesting context because the last little bit, it's been bigger. Like I'm trying to think how I'd say this better, but less specific. It's just a turn, I guess what I'm saying is, you have this visit with Moses and Elijah and these conversations about healing and his death and the purpose behind that and this kind of thing. And now we come to 24, and my section is entitled The Temple Tax, which I'm already shut down. I'm like, taxes. And, of course, Jesus is going to make even tax paying interesting. But I was just curious, Connor, anything that you would think about setting this up?
So two things that I want to bring up. One, I think, is just an interesting little thing of note that I had never thought of until this moment, and it doesn't really amaze me or perplex me. I just think it's interesting, and it might help kind of frame perspective differently. So in the passage, there'll be Jesus is challenged on is he going to pay the temple tax? And Jesus says this has this line, and he says, "From whom do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own children or from others?" And that's an interesting line. I think most of my life I just kind of skipped over it, and yet now I'm kind of realizing this is a foreign world to us in modern 21st century Americans. If you were to suggest, even in all of our political craziness, that Donald Trump's family or Joe Biden's family or Barack Obama's family shouldn't have to pay taxes while they're the leader of the country, that would be a fundamentally, like, any American would be like, yes, the president's family should have to pay taxes. That's outrageous. Of course they should. And yet there's something a given here. Jesus is like, of course the king's kids are not going to pay a tax. And so there's a part here that I think is really important, that so many of the things that we assume about everything, it's always important to check a lot of those thoughts at the door, because Jesus says something here that if we're just not careful, we'll just kind of run over and actually miss that there's a way that they view the world that is foreign to us, certainly in 21st century America. And the second thing that I would just point out here is this is a very politically charged question that gets asked of Jesus. This isn't a simple, like, hey, we're doing a list of questions at church of top 20 questions we need to ask here, and these will be our loose theological statements about how we feel about those, and we'll teach them on a Sunday course. So like there's a lot of weight and a lot of heft behind this question, and you miss out on a lot of this passage and just a lot of what Jesus is doing in general, if you don't recognize that there are weighty stakes to not just the way that Jesus is answering something, but the meaning behind why people are asking him that question.
I think that is a great observation. Clearly, our country, the United States, historically, I mean, I'm not a history guy, but taxation without representation is kind of just flows off the tongue, like we shouldn't have this. Mm-hmm. And even now when we say our taxation is high or however it goes, I'm not commenting on that. Nobody's like, man, my taxes are too low. So that's why I didn't bring that part up. But anyway, but still it's with that backdrop of, well, we have representation. I may dislike my representation. I'll trust my representation. That wasn't the case for them. And so I think it is really important that what you're pointing out is people stopped and listened to this question. And people stopped and listened to Jesus anyway, but I think this was like, whoa, wait a minute. This has so much potential to be explosive. And I think that's important. I think that's important to the context and his response. So with that in mind, I'll start in verse 24, Matthew 17. After Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma temple tax came to Peter and asked, "Doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax?" "Yes, he does," he replied. When Peter came into the house, Jesus was the first to speak. "What do you think, Simon?" he asked. "From whom do the kings of the earth collect duties and taxes? From their own children or from others?" "From others," Peter answered. "Then the children are exempt," Jesus said to him. "But so that we may not cause offense, go to the lake and throw out your line. Take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4-drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours." So, Connor, what about this interchange between Peter and Jesus amazes you?
Yeah, no, this is a weird, really kind of wild interaction where Jesus is off and away, and Peter is famous enough or well known enough that suddenly the people recognize him as Jesus' guy, and Jesus and Peter answers for Jesus, and then he comes back, and there's no like, it says Jesus was the first to speak, and so there's not like Peter's like relaying, "Hey, just so you know, this happened. I did the right thing," or whatever. Jesus is the first one to say, "Hey, let's have this conversation." And so he walks them along this path of, "Hey, is paying the tax right or good? Do we have to? Is it a necessity?" And then at the end, he's like, "Hey, you don't need to pay the tax. You're exempt. Like you're good." And then he goes, "But it may cause offense, so let's just go ahead and pay it." And that's such a wild. It's wild for Jesus because there's a truth that he's trying to get across to his disciples here that he wants them to learn. I think, there's multiple truths that is happening here. It's important to him because he's the first one to jump out and say, "Hey, I want you to know that like the children are exempt from this." And there's that truth. And then there's also the truth of like, but hey, let's not cause offense here, and let's just go ahead and pay it. And so for those two things, it's so fascinating to me that one, that this is the way that Jesus wants to go about it, and that these truths are both of these things are deeply important to him, and that they aren't in conflict. Because I think when you think of any sort of charge statement around taxation, usually it's black and white. No, this is evil. This is wrong. There's no representation, which makes it unjust and unfair. And therefore, we need to dump a whole bunch of tea in the harbor, or therefore we need to rise up, or therefore we need to all, the people of Israel would have been used to this sort of thing because like there was constant times where they were under subjugation from other people, and then they would refuse tribute, and that's the same sort of thing to their like Assyrian overlords or whatever. And so, yeah, I'm not rambling. I'm amazed. I'm amazed at how unclean this all is, and that I'm amazed the fact that it's very important that it's very important for Jesus that the disciples see that.
My amazement, and I'm saying it just in a different way, but it's completely in line with what you're saying. In a word, it's wisdom, that and a wisdom that is supernatural. I don't think it's a small thing that. So you're Peter, and you speak for Jesus, which I think that's exactly right. That Peter not only was known, but he felt the confidence to be like, yes, he does pay the tax. And I'm like, there's so much we don't know about their interactions, but this hasn't come up, But he's very confident. And he's coming into the house, and I wonder what his first words would have been. Hey, you got money for that tax? Or, hey, I answered that way. Was I right? Well, we don't know. And so that wisdom of knowing to take charge of the conversation, because he totally reframes the conversation. Like, before Peter can even ask a question or make an assertion that, hey, we need to be paying taxes or whatever it would be, Jesus not only asks him a question that, there's just so much to learn here. It's like when somebody comes to me and they're really hot, and unlike Jesus, I usually don't know. Like, I just, if you go to Memorial Drive Church of Christ and I get a call from you and you're like, hey, I'd like to meet sometime, I assume you're mad. I just do.
And you're trying to find a fish to put a coin in somewhere.
Yeah, and I'm like going fishing just randomly. But yeah, it's the way I was raised, the culture. When people would call my dad, who was a preacher, I assumed they were mad because they were usually mad. And he was supposed to stop something he was doing or stop something somebody else was doing. And so I just think it's hard for me not to project onto Peter some nervousness And I think this was, it had to be. And it was, taxation probably was the most, I don't think a lot of Romans were just grabbing women out and kidnapping them. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I think you'd hear stories of that happening in tense situations, but it's not like it's happening all the time. Taxation, all the time. This isn't even like their income tax. This is a temple tax. And I don't know, like, for always, we don't prepare for these discussions. So we could do a deep dive into how often do you pay the temple tax, and is it just when you enter a city you have to, or is it annually, or is it every time you come to the temple? But taxation was with them all the time. And it's kind of amazing that you don't have 100 interactions like this around taxation as much as it was, because this is why Rome didn't just destroy Jerusalem and ran it with the puppet, governor, Herod, because they wanted the money, and they just realized to subjugate people takes a lot of money and a lot of energy. If we simply control them, we get all their money without expending as much energy.
Money flowing is a lot better for business than a crater.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. And you don't make it a crater. And eventually it was made a functional crater, in AD 70, because it just, the rate of return.
Yeah, and then they rose up and they refused to keep the money flowing enough times.
There you go. Yeah, so this is a big, big deal. And so it's a big deal in how it's answered. It's interesting too to me that they don't bring the coin back to the asker necessarily.
Oh, that's gonna be part of my perplexion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even say anything about it. But it's like it's just Jesus personally. Like, this is going to be a big answer. I mean, this is the only passage he gives us on taxation really directly that I can think of.
One more, give the Caesar what is Caesar, but besides.
Yes, right. And so it is that part. You are right. Yeah, because that's a different interaction that maybe we should pick that up as a different, just to highlight the differances in these two passages. But still,
even two, like, that's not...
right. As big as an issue of taxation is, I would have expected more, Now, having said that...
Real quick, can I make a point there that I think is maybe illuminating that it might be helpful to remind ourselves is like, how you and I get taxed is, most of us, do you think about sales tax when you like buy something?
Not at all.
I haven't thought about sales tax since I was like a little kid and I had $20 and I got to make sure that it actually came underneath the $20 threshold. And so all the other taxes we have, whether it's Social Security or Medicaid or income tax, it just gets taken out of my check. And like, I'll see it in the number and maybe I'm less happy about it or whatever, or I feel good when I get my tax return back, but it's not like I'm not usually paying it out of my pocket. Right. And so there's a much more physical, visceral feeling. And most people do not like taxes. That's just a true statement. Even people who want higher taxes think their taxes should be lower. That's just a general truth of the matter. And so, but there is a sense in which, like, if I get frustrated about my taxes, like, okay, well, there are schools are good and roads are good.
Like having police, fire, department, all these kind of things. Yeah.
But if suddenly Canada came over the border and was like, hey, on top of all those other taxes to keep everything going, you also just need to pay us a because we're awesome tax. And we let you live tax.
Yeah.
That sort of tax is going to feel a lot different than like my sales tax that I know. Oh, well, the bond, I got to vote on a bond issue yesterday for the Tulsa schools, or I got to, pay for a massive arena that I go to 3 shows. Like the difference between how you'd feel about a tax paid to an overseer, oppressor of your society versus like begrudging, well, I don't really like how my schools are managed, or the roads are really rickety for, all these taxes we get. That feeling is completely different than like a oppressive government levying an even further tax upon you.
That is really, it's very, very true. It's very good. And temple, I didn't even think about that. It's like, this was their birthright.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sure the temple tax to some degree was going to the Jewish elite, the Jewish ruling
the people
class.
The people who were on side with the Romans.
Yeah, but there were the people, yes, aligned. So it's similar in feeling to the tax collector taking it, a Jew that's fundamentally functioning.
You're correct. That's right. That's right.
You. So anyway, so all of that. But back to the amazing piece. And then I'll give you perplexing what you got perplexing. But
I just want to honor what you said was completely correct. Maybe the heart behind what I said was partially correct, but my application was off. I was thinking about the tax collectors. I do think there's an interesting part thinking about the element of like of the people assuming that maybe the Messiah would be against the Pharisees but ultimately what I was incorrect, and that was helpful clarification by you.
Well, and just so you know, I'm in Enneagram 7. I assumed we were in agreement the whole time. So
well, I don't think we're in disagreement. I think I was overstating a thought that I had. I think I went a little too far.
Okay.
But I think that helps to set the table a little bit. But
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
Perplexion.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so I'm jump
perplexed
in.
at how wrong you could be, Connor.
I assume once I die, you'll do all these posthumous. The other reason Jason's wrong in this. Anyway, so my perplexion is what I see as wisdom in Jesus, I would perceive as inconsistent placating in me. Like think about, you have two kids, okay, and Amos doesn't talk back yet, okay, but in time he will, you know. But I think of my two children, and if I say to one child, I'm just using this data here, hey, I'm going to give you the money to pay for, I guess you in a statement it's like, how did the other apostles pay for their temple tax? You know, why is that fair? And I don't know, you know, maybe off Bible, you know, offline, Jesus like, hey, Andrew, you go you catch a fish, and any non-fisherman, raise your hand. Okay, we're going to need John to catch 3, you know.
Just to make sure I'm clear, temple tax, that was it was a yearly thing that I think they paid to the temple. Like, I think, I'm pretty sure now that you jogged my memory enough, I'm pretty sure it was like a yearly tax that like all males had to pay or something. I don't know. We could look it up, but that sounds
right. And that is really interesting. And he's back at Capernaum, which is a place that he, you know, has had spent a lot of time at. Do they have a tracker? Is just he and Peter's coming out? I mean, these are all other questions. But in general, even taking out of the issue of do the other apostles have to pay it? Does he pay it for them? You know, is this favoritism? It's just all of this. And this is not unusual. I find myself perplexed in many of these circumstances is I don't know. And I make these decisions all the time. So the other day, I'm driving down the street, and there's this lady. Did I share this last week?
I don't think so.
There's a lady carrying a bunch of bags in her hand, and it's Oklahoma, and the wind is so bad, I feel like it's going to blow her into the street. And I see her, and the Holy Spirit, I believe with all my heart, said, get her. And I was like, no. I was like, no, because I'm a man. Here's the truth.
Sure.
I'm a man picking up a woman. Now, granted, she's carrying groceries, but this is also the same stretch of street where I've seen men stop and pick up women that I think prostitution is happening. Now, it's daytime, but still, you know, depravity is depravity. And so I'm like, no, I'm not stopping because it'll look like this. And then I'm like, no, I'm not stopping because that'll scare her. And no, I'm not stopping. And I get half a mile down the road, literally, I'm like blocks and blocks away, and I literally yell out loud, and I'm like, fine. And I do a quick U-turn, and I go pick her up, and she's in my car, and we're driving. And I mean, the groceries are so stuffed between her and me, or her and the like, she didn't. My groceries are so stuffed, her groceries are so stuffed between her and the dashboard, you know, I'm not even like causing her. So the bell's going off that her seatbelt's not on. And then she is talking to herself nonstop. And then she says an apartment complex, and I'm like, fine. And it ends up being like 2 miles further than I thought it was. And the whole time I'm like, all she has to do is make an accusation about me. And now I'm in some kind of police experience. I'm like, this is so unwise. Did the Holy Spirit really tell you? I say all that to say, in the simplest act, I am so confused on what is of God and what is not of God. And this is a totally different in many ways, but it's still that applying of wisdom. Like, how did Jesus decide that in this particular case, the people's offense was worth honoring? And in all the times, literally, these people have been suffering for years, and you're going to heal on the Sabbath? So as not to offend, wait 12 hours. And they counted it, right? They counted the Sabbath of Friday through the Saturday afternoon. You don't even have to wait till the next morning. Just say, hey, come back in 2 hours.
Sun's down at 7 o'clock here, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I don't know how to be Jesus to these people, Jesus. Because even when I see this, I'm like, that's really cool. And we're not even talking about the miracle of finding a coin in a fish. Because to me, that's like that's Jesus level stuff. But I'm like, I would be so conflicted.
Yeah.
And it bothers me he isn't, I guess.
Well, what's so interesting is, so Jesus agrees, Peter agrees that, like, oh yeah, he pays the tax, and maybe there's some, there's clearly some, like, Peter's coming back to get the money for the tax. And so he doesn't know that Jesus, maybe this is what Jesus does when, like, he needs a little extra money on the side. He just conjures up, some fish. I don't know. But, like, from my understanding in my study of people who know what they're talking about, the most likely main funders of Jesus' ministry were women. And so it adds another, I think it's an important layer, because, like, I felt this way when certainly I worked for a church, and if you are using church resources and you feel like, oh man, I think God's calling me for that, the extra layer of like of judging, of making sure something is up to the smell test, that this is truly wise and judicious use of these funds, is so much higher than if, like, you're like, well, this is my money, and, like, yeah, I want to be wise with it, but, like, if I lose out on a scam on this, and okay, whatever, then it is what it is. But the pressure is so much higher when it's not your money. And then the fact that Jesus, then he doesn't take from the group, he just conjures it up out of nowhere, adds a whole other dynamic that is really funny, because it's like they're talking about the temple tax, and normally it's like, when I pay a tax, it's like, oh, that's coming out of my pocket. I could have done something. I could have bought something with this. I could have used this money for food or for shelter or whatever. And no longer am I able to do that, because I'm no longer able to do it in the fullest way I'd want to, because part of my money had to go to pay this tax. And yet Jesus says, hey, you're exempt from this tax. And then the money that he agrees to pay comes out of nowhere. It does not come out from the group. And so, like, I don't know if Jesus is trying to communicate something there, but it is incredibly interesting to think about. Like, is there a higher commentary that he wants to make? Because he could have been easily, it's like, yeah, Peter, go talk to Judas, get the temple tax, right. Or, do what we always do, or do what you always do. And yet, I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. And it is one of those things. If Jesus were here, number one, this would be like the 5,000th question I'd ask him. But once we get to the 5,000th,
I let you sitting here, and
like,
he appears.
Tax fish without
so the fish. What kind of fish was he?
Do many fish carry drachma, or is it just one? Was it
how many fish? How many fish is it wrong for me to kill to check to see if it's got before?
But I'm just saying. Once I got to question 5,000, and I asked him,
did you guys eat the fish?
Did you release it? Oh, that raises a whole. Anyway. But it was like, I just think he'd be like, oh, I think you missed the point. Matter of fact, I think the majority of my questions, it's just based on Job's experience, where his essence is, what did I do that was so wrong? And Jesus' answer is, you don't know a lot of stuff, which is true, and it gives perspective, and it still doesn't answer the question, And yet Job found seemingly peace, and allegory or actual story, I'm just saying that is a very disquieting experience to me.
One of the things I think about all the time, where we think when we get to heaven, we'll be like, okay, we'll just ask Jesus all these questions. He'll be like, oh yeah, here it is. Here are the answers. Here's the brass tacks of how it happened. Or maybe we'll be like a movie where you can be like, I want to see exactly what this movie looks like, and we'll get the answer. And Jesus will have like a DVD commentary where it's like, no, when Peter said this is what I was thinking. For kids, I don't know if you knew this, back in the day, DVD commentaries had director's cuts where, like, directors would be talking over it as of the film, and there wasn't near as much entertainment, so people found that fun.
Well, it seems distracting now, but it was so interesting.
Oh, it was. And like when you got the big, I don't know how, if those came out only with DVDs or VHSs, but like when you get these big, massive boxes of DVDs where, like, sometimes they'd even have multiple, like, hey, they'd have the actors or whatever, and I can remember. It doesn't matter. Anyways, that's the picture. Maybe that is what heaven is like. I don't know. But here's the sense that I think I get with Scripture, with discovering who God is. Like, heaven is not going to be an experience where I don't think heaven is going to be an experience where we get zapped up, or we appear all of a sudden and we have 100% perfect knowledge of everything. I think it'll look a lot like this, but perfected and holy and better, because he'll be here. We'll literally be in his midst. And he is a person, and we are people. And just like I don't think I will fully understand any random stranger I meet in heaven. Like, I think there'll be part of the joy of heaven will be like there'll be discovery, and like, oh, I get to fully know all these people that are perfected and love God and love Jesus, and I get to go on that journey of discovering them, and that. It's cool to know a lot about people. What's also a lot cooler is to discover it about them, to have earned knowledge, have yada, experiential knowledge. And what I often wonder if Jesus was sitting here, maybe he'd be like, "Oh, you're so dumb. You guys don't have ears. You have no ears, and it's a problem." Or maybe he would say that sometimes. I think he would. But like, if we're genuinely trying to, which I think we're trying to do, we're genuinely trying to figure out what he wants for us, what God is trying to communicate, and how we fit into the whole purpose. I think that will be a lot of what heaven is like.
Yeah.
In the best way possible, which is why like this podcast is such a joy for me, and being with you is such a joy, because it's that it's a pursuit together of wrestling and trying to come into further knowledge of God and of Jesus and how that plays out for us. And I think, from my reading, my understanding, could be wrong, I think heaven is much more of an adventure and discovery than most people imagine when they think of it.
I think you're absolutely right. What Jesus, and we've made this point many, many times, but what distinguishes Jesus from everybody else is he says, I don't do anything without God telling me to, without the Spirit saying, here's what you're going to do. And you get the sense it's in real time. And it's like, what would it be like if God was just with you in that way all the time? And not the God that you're like, oh, you mean the judgy guy? No. I mean the life-giving guy, the guy that created whimsy and fun and joy and peace.
It's so funny with your story of the woman in the bag, where it's like the God of the universe spoke into your heart, Jason, ask that woman, if she wants to ride. And we've had this conversation, you and I have had this conversation offline so many times, where it's like we have had God speak, where it's like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to do something, and it's like, and you're put out, you're like, fine, I'm gonna do this. Okay, God of the universe, who just spoke into my heart, my brain, right, whatever, I will do this thing. And one time I had that experience where like it was a similar sort of experience, and you were like, Connor, I think God spoke to you, and it's like, oh yeah, I missed out on the presence of God. The presence of God is always there, but like my awareness of the presence of God was so much more acute, much stronger, much all that good stuff. And like, because of me, I let my perspective get in the way, and it's like, oh man, how do I align myself more so that when that situation happens and I feel that feeling, I go, oh wait, this is the presence of God. This is coming up. And I think that's more of what heaven will look like. I'm going to transition really quick to what perplexes me, because we need to get out of here. So we got a time crunch. The fact that there's no like, okay, and Peter goes out and gets the coin. There's none of that action is incredibly fascinating to me. I know I cannot tell you any specifics. And so maybe this is dangerous to say this. I feel fairly confident there are several stories, at least one or two stories in in the ancient world of like a fish having coins in their mouths. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's a thing. And so there could be some sort of commentary happening here of I don't know. It doesn't matter. What is what is perplexing here is that how decentralized the miracle here is, and I'm just endlessly fascinated by the times that where like the miracles are put on as the put on at the front of the stage, versus like this one, which we don't even get it. It's just kind of in the background, and we don't even know if it actually ever happens or if they move on or whatever. And so that is very perplexing to me.
I think it is a funny miracle in this way, or it's so understated. That's it. It's like, this is so. My sense is, if you have all powerful, then if you change the whole world to pink right now, everything's pink now. Everything's just recolored pink. If you're all powerful, then you still have all the power. So is it more powerful to move all the mountains 6 inches to the left than to put a coin in a fish's mouth? It's the same expenditure of power, because you're all powerful if you're an all powerful God. And so it is such a small, insignificant thing. It's almost like, why is your first miracle that's recorded water to wine? It just seems, it shows us some stuff, but it's not like this huge.
Oh, I disagree. I could preach 10 sermons on that,
on why it is.
But this one's weird, because like the first one, quick with the water and wine. The fact that the God of the universe, first time that when he shows up on the planet, his first physical inbreaking of the kingdom of God in the person of Jesus, is that he wants to save a party. You can preach about that for ages.
I don't misunderstand.
No. I know you're saying that. I'm saying like grand points, but like if you were like, hey, I've got a sermon series over the next 4 weeks in my church where we're talking about Jesus conjuring up a coin out of a fish, I'd be like, okay.
I do get it. Yes, absolutely. And this is, to me, this is much more of that. But in terms of when it says in Hebrews that Jesus, that signs and wonders and signs, miracles, and spiritual signs, wonders, signs, and anyway, there's a verse there in the first chapter of Hebrews. But it's like to prove who he was. And then he does it, and his first miracle, it's quizzical. That's it. It's curious, you know. And I'm not disagreeing with the point on here's the value, here's why he did it. But you would never guess that'd be it. He's going to start with a miracle.
You think of splitting
blesses a party, but the party doesn't even know they're being blessed.
You would think splitting the seas, raising dry bones,
exactly.
Something.
Yeah, that would be this big takeaway. And those things, interestingly, are folded into the middle of his ministry. That again, well, this is long term. His branding is bad. He doesn't know how to do branding. He doesn't know how to do momentum. There's a ton of things.
Well, he didn't have AI. So.
Well, I know. But it is that part. And this is another thing. This is such a cool deal between him and Peter. Even the reader in this case does not know how it went. So I totally see it. I totally see that.
Man, so many questions. I'm excited. I remember this. We did this probably a few years ago, and this was I remember being shocked that we got as much out of it then as we did. I have no idea what we talked about. So I'll be very interested to listen to this one and then listen to that one and see where we differentiate and where we come together. Grace, peace, and love.